Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Season A, the platform where we speak truth to power. What I want to do basically is to show you a recent report by one of the UN senior staff or senior members. Keep in mind, I say this. I think as for Africa, because of the veto powers of the three major uh, people that created UN, UK, US, and of course France. Because of the veto powers, which you've now seen demonstrated, they prevented the ceasefire from taking place, i.e., principally the US has overruled the decision by majority of the UN members to actually demand for and call for a ceasefire and back that up with sanctions against probably both sides, most likely both sides. But really, principally, it's about the Israeli. But because of the backing that they received from America, they've continued with this onslaught against defenseless people, which what can best be termed an open prison. Let me bring to you something that I saw. I want to read this to you. Let's just quickly read through this quickly. 1 second. Just want to just check something. 1 minute. 1 minute. So let me just check this. So it says on here, it says uh, how the U.S. has used its veto powers at the UN in support of Israel. So you can see now that there is no balanced opinion from the U.S. They are supporting the side that's carrying out genocide. That is the reality of what we are speaking about. The U.S. has used its power to veto has used its veto power at least 34 times to block UN Security Council resolutions that were critical of Israel. So you can see there's clear open it's open secret now, clear bias against Palestinians. And that is from a so-called leader of the free world that America likes to call itself or term itself or refer to itself. Um, so a meeting of the Security Council on the conflict between Israel and Palestinian armed group Hamas at UN headquarters in New York on October 24, 2023. So it says here the United Nations Security Council failed to adopt a resolution on the ongoing situation in Gaza after two competing draft resolutions were rejected by member states on Wednesday. Russia and China vetoed a U.S. drafted resolution that called for humanitarian pauses and Israel's right to defend itself. A second draft resolution sponsored by Russia, which called for humanitarian ceasefire, failed to garner enough votes to pass. The United States was expected to veto the resolution had it garnered enough votes to pull to put it on path to approval. The two resolutions were put to vote on Wednesday at the UN headquarters in New York after an intense open debate by members on the situation in the Middle East, including Palestinian question. This was the second UNSC draft resolution put to vote since the Israeli Palestinian war started 3 weeks ago. Is it really a war? Because as far as I know, they are in the same land. It's not as though a foreign country has been involved. This is Israel taking over and controlling what is happening in Gaza and the West Bank. So I'm not so sure if it's a war. But anyway, that's just my thinking. So the first one was held on October 18 when the US blocked a resolution calling for humanitarian pauses. 12 countries voted in favor. The U.S. response to the UNSC resolutions amid this conflict, is in line with its historical use of its veto power, to block any resolutions that might be critical of Israel or call for Palestinian statehood. Now, they talk about two-state solution. If you are, you know, blocking anything that will call for the Palestinian statehood, then any talk of a two-state solution is it's a joke. It's a joke. You can see it. Since 1945, a total of 36 United Nations Security Council draft resolutions related to Israel Palestine have been vetoed by one of the five members. Um, the U.S., China, the U.S., Russia, China, the United Kingdom, and France. Out of these 34 were vetoed by the U.S. and 2 by Russia and China. The majority of these resolutions were drafted to provide a framework for peace in the decades-long Israeli-Palestine conflict, including asking Israel to adhere to international laws, calling for self-determination for Palestinian statehood, or condemning Israel for displacement of the Palestinians or settlement building in occupied Palestinian territories. So I'm putting this as a real background to the whole situation from the onset. The U.S. 34 times voted down any resolution that was critical of Israel and supporting Palestinian statehood. These are the words are what you see on the screen. I'm not changing it. So that's the context. So if anybody comes and saying I'm biased in any way, I am reading what is in the news. It's covered by Al Jazeera, and this is what is happening, has been happening in the UN. Now, in that context, let us now go and hear what the UN representative, I think it's from Denmark or Norway, I'm not quite sure, was speaking about the concerns, the real concerns. For me, it is now clear that the veto is a real issue. Africa, if you left to me, I would be suggesting that Africa, this minute, all 54 African countries pull out of the UN, set up our own alternative body, and begin to confront issues around this injustice that's going on, particularly in the African continent. The UN is nothing more than a vehicle to loot and extract resources from Africa, and we need to build a body for Africa to protect ourselves. Because what is happening in Palestine is something that is experienced on a daily basis in places like the Congo, where there are resources, they are being extracted under the guise of the UN in Africa. So that's my take. But let's now watch this UN envoy. I'm not quite sure. They'll tell you his name in a minute. Amirulwala of BBC will tell you. Matthew Amirulwala of the BBC will tell you. We know there are issues around the coverage of the BBC, but let's hear this. This seems to at least be talking about the truth to a certain extent. Let's go ahead.
Communications cut. It is so difficult. We heard from our correspondent on the ground, but only the use of a satellite phone getting that particular communication. We'll hear that in a moment or two. But let's speak now for the next few minutes to Jan Egeland, who is the Secretary General of the Norwegian Refugee Council. And the Council, of course, has got many people on the ground doing work in the Gaza Strip. Jan Egeland, welcome here to the programme. Have you been able to make contact with your teams there?
To the best of my knowledge, no. We have still no contact with our 54 colleagues on the ground in Gaza. We had a head count again yesterday. And
this guy is nothing to do with the UN, so I apologize. So it's the Secretary General to the Norwegian Refugee Council, Jan Egeland. So it's nothing to do with the UN, so apologies for the misquoting. I thought it was, but it actually says here on the screen, Jan Egeland, Secretary General, Norwegian Refugee Council. So at least that's a body that is sort of, it's not part of UN or part of Palestine. They're independent and they are talking about things from their point of view, what should happen. So nobody can say there is some kind of bias towards Palestinian. This is an independent body that's making statements that you're about to hear. Let's listen on.
The day before, not today, what we know is that they are fleeing for their lives. And not just in the north, also in the south. There is no safe place in Gaza. Mm-hmm. One of my female colleagues in Gaza lost her only child to this bombing campaign. And this was close to Rafah, where they were asked to go by the Israelis. So the only sensible thing now is a ceasefire Too many children are already dead. There is 1 million children, and there is no escape. This place is sealed off. Israel has closed all borders. We cannot even get relief to the people inside.
I'll come to relief in a moment, but only in the last few minutes the UN has warned of, quote, the potential for thousands more civilians to die as the Gaza ground operation continues. By what you're saying, that is your fear too.
Absolutely. Thousands more will die. Thousands have died. There's no doubt about it. I mean, the figures have been disputed, but no, thousands have died. There is no doubt about it. There are many, many hundreds, if not thousands, under the rubble. Women, children. It's disproportionate. It's not a rational counter-terror campaign. This is smashing a densely populated place with no escape. You cannot leave Gaza. The only sensible thing is a ceasefire, and then let's discuss counterterrorism measures.
Well, there's no sign of a ceasefire. Quite the opposite, as the pressure grows for some sort of humanitarian pause. But when you hear the Israeli military reissue that warning for people to get out of the north, what is your gut instinct when you hear that?
My gut instinct is that it's very wrong to ask 1 million people to go to where there is no safety, no housing, no accommodation, no sanitation, no water, no relief. And then basically say, we're coming in and we're shooting at anybody. It's your fault if we shoot you. That's the implication of this. It's an against humanitarian law of armed conflict. It looks like forcible transfer, which would be a violation of the basic rules of humanitarian law.
Exactly.
The civilians in northern Gaza are old, they are women, they are children, orphans, sick and wounded people. That must be remembered by the Israelis.
But you've been saying more or less the same thing now for almost 3 weeks, and it doesn't appear that anyone's listening.
No, but we'll keep doing it. I think world public opinion will be able to impress upon Israel as the stronger party now. Of course, also Hamas has to release the hostages. They call them prisoners of war. They are civilians that need to be released without conditions. We need also an end to the rockets flying into Israel. Both sides have to come to their senses. There has to be a ceasefire now, and I hope the US, the UK, Germany, European Union, France, let's name them really, can tell their ally Israel, ceasefire, stop this. Too many children are dead.
A quick final thought, because you talked about aid at the start. Are you able to operate at all at the moment, given what we've seen in the last few hours, or have you stopped? Is there hope of getting more aid in today at any stage? What is the latest in terms of your operations?
Up until yesterday, we could transfer some very small cash amounts to widows and families on the run, etc. We could operate in a few of the UNRWA schools for children and so on. Today, I fear we're all fleeing for. All my colleagues are fleeing for their lives. So at the moment, there is no relief for anybody. Only misery, only suffering, only death.
Jan Egeland, thank you for taking time to speak to us here on BBC. We're grateful. Thank you very much.
So, there you hear the real situation on ground. Hamas, nobody is supporting any terrorism, and I'm calling it out if that's what they're doing. But they are relatively small in number, and it's not even anyway. Terrorism is wrong. But the state-sponsored terrorism that is backed by the U.S., you heard Jan Egeland say that Israel must stop. And they have the power to put a stop to this and stop this bloodletting. Half of the population are children. And I had some figures quote 3,000 a day are being killed, something like that. That's that doesn't even bear thinking. So you have the information. This is an update that I felt it is something we should bring to our attention. One of the things I would like to say is that the actions of the U.S., Russia, U.S., UK, and France, particularly the U.S., in using the veto powers to prevent any criticism of Israel tells us why having our own body, setting up our own body away from this UN fast is the only solution for African countries. We really need to do that and set up an alternative world body where there will be real truth, fairness, and justice rather than this imposition. Look at the onslaught, the small picture on the top there. That is the smoke rising over Gaza. I mean, that place is effectively an open prison, and bombing women and children. I mean, the guy said it. They'd like to. It goes against the UN laws, resolution. You know, they're forcibly trying to move the people into Egypt and take that land. That's what they're trying to do. I don't know what your thoughts are. I just thought I'd share that. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, you're watching Season AY, the platform where we speak with the power. Please go ahead. Subscribe to Season AY, the platform where we speak with the power. Help us grow the platform. We'll cover some more things as we go along, but let us have your thoughts on this. I mean, it is really horrifying to see this, but what is going on here for me, my takeaway and what I want all Africans to be looking at is how we can impress upon all the 54 African so-called nations created by the very same colonials who are instigating this genocide that we are witnessing. We need to get those 54 countries to actually pull out en masse out of the UN, because the UN, in using veto powers to carry out this kind of genocide, we definitely don't want to be any part of a body that actually uses and coerces others to carry out blatant genocide before the whole world. And they are prepared, they're not going to take any responsibility for the actions that they take. Anyway, that's just my take. What are your thoughts on this? You are, of course, watching Citizen AY, the platform where we speak truth to power. I'll be back later on. Thank you, and bye for now.